Hi, I'm Ksenia Yasnova, Public Relations Specialist of the company RosCo. Before starting a business, you need to choose a legal form. What is the difference between a sole proprietorship and an LLC? In what form it is better to conduct business? Do businessmen always have a choice? Let's find out. Before starting a business, it is necessary to choose the optimal organizational and legal form for himself. The choice of one form or another depends on many nuances, and in some situations, the choice between forms is impossible.
How many people are involved in organizing a business?
Let's assume that businessmen have decided to participate in business on equal terms. For example, two or more partners decided to open their own business. And in this situation, a dilemma arises for which of the partners to register a business. An IP is opened for one owner, while an LLC can have several founders. When opening a business, you need to think in advance about how the earned profit will be shared and how the other partner will receive the earned money if there is a conflict of interest. In the end, the business may fail and businessmen will have losses and debts. Of course, in the case of registering an individual entrepreneur, it is easy for a businessman to manage money. At the first need, you can withdraw money from the current account, indicating in the check that payments are made for your own needs. And the second partner may be left with nothing, because formally he is not entitled to any payments and a share of the profit. A registered individual entrepreneur is responsible for all business risks and with all his property. In this case, the partner whose actions led to the losses of the IP is not responsible for anything. In case if the business involves the participation of some partners, then it is more advisable to open an LLC and establish the shares of each participant. Then, and when the participant leaves the business, he will be paid a valid share on legal grounds.
Is there such a choice in all areas of activity?
Even if the entrepreneur is alone and it is preferable for him to open an individual entrepreneur, this is not possible in every business area. It isn't possible in pawn shop, insurance activities, producing and selling alcohol, medicines. An individual entrepreneur cannot be a broker and be engaged in the production and sale of weapons. An individual entrepreneur cannot provide personnel to another company.
Which is easier to register, LLC or IP?
When registering a business, you need to collect a certain package of documents. For sole proprietorships, it is much less than for the LLCs. Unlike individual entrepreneurs, LLCs need to develop a charter involving lawyers. Of course, you can also use a standard charter, but it is unlikely that it will take into account all the wishes of the businessman. To register an LLC, you need a legal address. Therefore, it becomes necessary to conclude a lease agreement for premises.
What is the responsibility of LLC and IP to the creditors?
Starting any business, businessmen plan to make a profit. However, no one is immune from losses. For example, emergencies, changes in market conditions, or unfair actions of business partners. As a result, businessmen do not have working capital. They cannot pay off creditors, banks, suppliers. If the business is organized as an individual entrepreneur, then the individual entrepreneur will personally answer with his property. The peculiarity of this form is that his property is not divided into personal and used in business. Of course, an individual entrepreneur as an individual has property that cannot be foreclosed. For example, they own housing, received government benefits, household items. If a businessman is created in the form of an LLC, then its participants are not liable for debts with their personal property. A LLC is liable with the limits of its authorized capital. And if it is proved that the losses were caused by the actions of the director, then in the event of the bankruptcy of the company, the directors may be held subsidiary liability. Only then will he answer with personal property.
Which is better in terms of accounting?
An individual entrepreneur, unlike an LLC, may not keep accounting records or submit financial statements to tax authorities. Sole proprietors need accounting for tax purposes. But unlike an LLC, an individual entrepreneur can work on a patent. Instead of submitting tax returns, an individual entrepreneur pays for a patent. Having paid a fixed amount of a patent, an individual entrepreneur can forget about personal income tax, property tax, VAT. But not every type of activity can buy a patent. In the event that an LLC is not a small business entity, then its accounting becomes more complicated because it needs to apply accounting standards. Therefore, it is almost impossible for a businessman to keep records in an LLC.
In what form is it better to conduct business, IP or LLC?
An LLC has more serious responsibility than an individual entrepreneur. Often, large counterparties prefer to deal not with individual entrepreneurs, but with LLCs. The choice of one form or another also depends on the scale of the business. I'm glad you watched the video till the end. I'm Ksenia Yasnova. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment and RosCo specialists will kindly answer them. And of course, subscribe to our channel, where you'll find loads of useful information, not only for your business, but also for yourself. Stay in touch, stay with RosCo.